We begin with Ray McDonald and the National Football League's perfect season when it comes to the safety, welfare, and interests of women and children. The perfect season. The league and its teams lost every time. In each story, McDonald, Adrian Peterson, Ray Rice, the league was, to paraphrase Winston Churchill, offered the choice of shame or war. Each time the NFL chose shame, and they would get war later anyway. Looking back on 2014 in the commissioner's office and the owner's suites, back to that February night when Ray Rice clocked his wife in the Atlantic City hotel elevator, back before we knew rather than we just supposed what was on the second tape, it would have taken courage, moral force, for the Baltimore Ravens to have said that following February Monday, Ray Rice has had his contract voided by this team, or for Roger Goodell to say Ray Rice is suspended indefinitely. Appeals, lawsuits, not unfounded outrage against the violation of due process, each would have followed, and each would have been nothing short of war. But Goodell and the Ravens and the league as a whole, and as the sum of its teams, have no courage, and they have no moral force. So instead of going to war on behalf of women and other victims of domestic violence, the NFL set up a disgusting kangaroo court of an inquiry, with the victim having to sit next to the criminal, and the Ravens set up a Soviet-era purge-style trial, a news conference in which both the wife beater and the wife had to confess and apologize in public. And the league and the Ravens arranged a trivial punishment for Ray Rice that demeaned every woman in this country. And then the inarguable evidence the NFL just couldn't seem to get its hands on emerged. And the NFL had to reverse course. And it had to do all the things it should have done in February, even though its legal right to do any of them had expired when Goodell and Steve Bisciotti and all the rest showed their cowardice and moral ambiguity and chose the shame of the easy way out instead of the war to protect what was right. End result, Ray Rice, whose own cowardice and lack of moral force is the root of all of this. He winds up not just looking like the secondary victim here, but he is judged by an independent arbitrator to be the secondary victim, to the point where yesterday, you know where Ray Rice was? Not in jail, not in counseling, not in a retreat somewhere. He was at a Toys for Tots event in Baltimore, allowed around women and children, and endowed by Roger Goodell and Steve Bisciotti and all the rest with a new dose of his own moral force, with the right, at least in his own mind, to say, quote, "I made a horrible mistake in my life, but if you truly believe in second chances, they will forgive me." Nice work, Commissioner. The league and Ziggy Wilf and Rick Spielman and the Vikings then replayed the exact same wrong choice between shame and war. In retrospect, it is impossible to believe that after his own texts in which he admitted to a brutal form of, quote, discipline, unquote, against one of his many children, the Vikings and the league believed the appropriate punishment was to have Adrian Peterson sit out one game with pay. One game with pay. And then there was a loud self-congratulatory announcement that Peterson's banishment to this devil's island was over and everything was all better now. This, like Rice, was the easy way out. Shame. The war that has ensued since will likely end with the NFL getting its disciplinary process, at least the monetary part of that process, destroyed in a federal court because a league employee, despite his denials, promising a 2-week suspension might not sound like a binding agreement to a former league employee who was pretending to be an independent arbitrator, but it sure as hell is going to sound like a binding agreement to a jury. And the schizophrenic swings of what the punishment should be, from 3 days off paid to 15 games off, loses $4 million, that will sound to that jury like the actions of a team and a league that just makes it up as it goes along, and presto, as Ray Rice is a secondary victim over there, so too will Adrian Peterson become one over here. And all this weakness and all this shame, all of this refusal to stand for something and then defend that stance comes to a head in this Ray McDonald saga. 3 months ago, the 49ers and the NFL could have acted in some way, in some fashion, after his pregnant girlfriend called police saying he had attacked her. The 49ers' first response was also to call the police. The police, in the person of a part-time 49ers employee whose role, it is now clear, was to get Ray McDonald out of whatever it was that he had gotten himself into. The team then filled the sky with blather about there being no room for domestic abusers on their team, but there was always the need for due process. And they went out and started Ray McDonald in 12 games, and he was well on his way to registering a career season high in tackles until the police showed up on his doorstep yesterday searching for evidence of sexual assault against another woman. The 49ers also had Churchill's choice, shame or war. They chose shame. got war later, and now they're dealing with a new, fresh supply of shame. They released Ray McDonald 3 hours after the policeman's knock, 106 days after they bleated about due process, 108 days after they tried to blunt the real police by sending over their police, and 3 days after their team was eliminated from the playoff picture. If the second McDonald case develops into charges, there will be many who will make the leap and say it was enabled by the cowardly inaction by the 49ers and the NFL in the first McDonald case. It is a huge leap, and I am not prepared to make it. But the public may make it, and make it easily. However, it is no leap to look at what one man passing moral judgment said as he did so. When it becomes a pattern of poor decision-making, the man said, which it has in this case, it becomes a time when it leaves you with no other decision to be made but the one we made today. That was the 49ers general manager explaining why they fired Ray McDonald, and due process be damned. A pattern of poor decision-making which leaves you with no other decision. He was talking about Ray McDonald. He should have been talking about himself, his team, and the National Football League.